The legend of the Bell Witch haunting has everything you could ever want in a ghost story. An evil spirit, demonic possessions, vengeful hauntings, and even an appearance by the devil himself. But what if this terrifying tale also had a connection to one of the most famous ghost stories ever told? Hi, everyone. Today we're exploring the possible Sleepy Hollow connection to the Bell Witch haunting, and I'm your host. In the early 1800s, John Bell and his family were tormented by a witch. At least that's how most people remember the Bell Witch haunting, the ghastly tale of supernatural terror that struck the Bell family and the small town of Adams, Tennessee. But the story of the Bell Witch actually begins with John Bell moving to Adams with his young family in 1816. There they purchased a large plantation house from his father-in-law, General John Coffey. And while the home was certainly grand, it was also allegedly built over a Native American burial ground, a detail that would become important later. For a few years, the family enjoyed their new home and no strange occurrences took place. Until one night when John Bell was awoken by the sound of someone shaking his bed. Thinking it was his young daughter, he began to speak to her and asked her to stop. But the shaking continued and the voice replied, "I am no daughter of yours. I am the witch that lives in your cellar. You have disturbed me, and for 7 long years I will make your life hell." As the voice continued to taunt him, Bell realized that the shaking was coming from the foot of the bed. And as he reached out to investigate, the footboard flew off the bed and struck him in the face. Although this terrifying event marked the beginning of the haunting, it would only escalate as time went on. Objects would fly through the air, shaking the beds and knocking pictures off the walls. Witnesses even reported seeing apparitions moving about the home. The ghost of a woman in a nightgown or a hunched old man with a long white beard. Perhaps most disturbingly, the ghost interacted with the living. At one point, the ghost of the woman in the nightgown was seen carrying a bucket of water up the stairs, but then turned and asked one of the daughters for more water. When she refused, the ghost disappeared. As the hauntings escalated, so did the presence of John Bell. Soon the entity began speaking to him directly, taunting him and cursing him, sometimes even biting him on the neck. It got so bad that Bell eventually moved into a separate bedroom, which the ghost promptly haunted as well. Things continued in this manner until one day the spirit spoke to Bell and told him that he would die on Christmas night. As predicted, Bell passed away in his sleep on December 25, 1820. But here is where the story takes a darker turn. According to those present, the ghost appeared at the foot of the bed and beckoned to Bell's body. Then the corpse rose and walked toward the door. After a brief pause, the ghost returned and with a blood-curdling scream, dragged Bell's body out into the night. The next morning, the corpse was found outside the house. Although there was no trace of any footprints in the soft soil, it seemed the witch had vanished with her victim. So what does this all have to do with Sleepy Hollow? Well, as I mentioned earlier, the Bell family home was allegedly built on a Native American burial ground. In particular, the tribe that lived on the land before the settlers arrived was the Cherokee. And according to some accounts, one of their braves died in a battle with a rival tribe and was laid to rest under the very spot where John Bell made his home. Some believe that this restless spirit is what came to be known as the Bell Witch, though others claim that the spirit may have been the vengeful former owner of the house, Martha Morton Godfrey. Now let's explore the connection to Sleepy Hollow. As many of you know, the village of Sleepy Hollow, Newark, was settled primarily by Dutch immigrants. And because of this, many of their traditions, including their folklore, carried over from the Old World. One such tradition was the belief in witchcraft, a practice that was widely feared and often unjustly accused, especially of women who unfortunately bore the brunt of these accusations. In fact, one of the most famous trials of the Salem witch craze saw a young woman named Elizabeth Webb accused of bewitching several members of her community. What happened next would have a profound impact on Sleepy Hollow's history. During the trial, Webb's lawyer brought in a local physician named John D. Witt, who examined the accusers and determined that their symptoms were not the result of witchcraft, but rather the side effects of eating poisonous mushrooms. Although this testimony was enough to convince the jury of Webb's innocence, the judge still found her guilty and sentenced her to prison. However, after serving only a short time of her sentence, Webb was released and sued the accusers for slander. This lawsuit was ultimately successful, but it wasn't without its consequences. You see, many of the accusers were poor and unable to pay the damages awarded to Webb, so their houses and belongings were auctioned off to cover the costs. And who just so happened to be the highest bidder on many of these properties? General John Coffey. Yes, that same John Coffey who sold the Bell family home. So while there is no direct link between the Bell Witch and Sleepy Hollow, this forgotten thread of history reveals an interesting parallel between the two tales. In both cases, we have an innocent individual accused of a crime they did not commit. And in both cases, we have a wealthy landowner who profits from the misfortune of others. It is a chilling thought that the same man may have inadvertently set in motion the events that led to both how the Salem witch trials and the Bell witch haunting. Thank you all for watching. Do you think the Bell witch is actually the ghost of Elizabeth Webb? Let me know your thoughts down below. And while you're there, make sure to like and subscribe for more historical hauntings. I'll see you next time.